time is something we cannot stop unless you're the doctor. This FanFest, as much as I hate to admit it, and this game isn't going to last forever.
Right. Especially being an MMO, by nature, it isn't going to exist forever.
As much as I'd like it to, it won't. So 10, 20, 15 years from now, I won't be going to this convention because it won't exist anymore because people will stop playing it.
Inconceivable!
Hello and welcome to Inconceivable. I'm William.
I'm Alex.
I'm Kyle, and our special guest is Hoingyoma. Shoutouts to Steins Gate.
If you're not watching the video, Kyle, describe what it looks like.
Oh, that's right. This is also an audio podcast.
Yeah, that's what a podcast is like.
When I get to him, I'll describe how adorable he is.
Oh,
yeah.
Wait for that.
Looks like a fish and a bunny.
All right. So what do you have for us today?
As we admire my plucky.
Okay. We're just all looking at it. Oh, right.
Yeah. He's quite very adorable. So yes, today's topic of discussion for me is us talking about kind of meta commentary on conventions themselves. We touched upon this earlier about the difference between, say, an anime con and a gaming con.
Yeah.
But of the two we compared, both of those, one would say, is a pretty large con, specifically citing Anime Boston or the Katsukons versus the PAX East or any of the PAXs or even Rooster Teeth, RTX, I would say. But today we're going to deep dive more into that, where we're going to compare the large cons to that of the more niche cons. And by niche, I mean cons that are very much focused on one particular thing. And I'll be citing my experiences going to the Final Fantasy XIV Fan Fest in North America, which was held last November in Las Vegas. So yeah, I guess to really open it to you guys, before I talk for like half the time, I want to ask, like, by me saying the word niche con, and let's assume you know what the word niche means. For those who don't, niche is something that's just really more focused and specific. So for you guys, have you been to a niche con, or is this something you want to go to?
I think something that comes close, however, it's leaving the niche category, is RTX, being Rooster Teeth convention, because it's only their content. And they started out just making a couple things when they got started. They're known for Red versus Blue and Ruby and now Genlock. But like they started in 2011, and when they started in 2011, literally it was like the equivalent of a festival. Like it wasn't like a convention. They had it in a field, and they had like a few hundred people. And now they, which is hosted in Austin. They take the convention center and like the whole thing. They worked on from like moving to the convention center to taking like from one of the big rooms into having multiple rooms, and now just the entire convention center. I went for the first time last year, and it was a really, really cool experience. And I feel like even though it is becoming less niche, I still think that it had a lot of the benefits of what a niche con has. Mostly by the fact that I think a good example is when I showed up in Austin at the airport, I saw people with Rooster Teeth merch who was coming in, and obviously they're here for RTX. And without even thinking, I went up to them and said, "Hi, you guys for RTX?" And they're like, "Yeah." So we're just bouncing off each other, getting hyped. And it's easy to do that because it's more focused. We knew exactly what we're here for.
Yeah, and that's going more lines of the benefits of being a niche con. But to go along with that, RTX, Rooster Teeth itself is now grown to be a large company.
Yeah.
So would you also consider BlizzCon a niche con?
Yeah, see, that's a good question. I think that it's weird because it's got such a large audience, but it's got that focal point of it. Because, Blizzard, even though it's really big, only has a few games, really. Few main games. You've got... I'm trying not to get it confused with Riot, because sometimes I get their games confused.
Sure.
But they have...
StarCraft, Warcraft, Overwatch, Diablo.
Yeah, okay. I keep wanting to throw League in there, but that's Riot's.
Yeah.
Those 4 games alone is the majority of their content.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's... If you... when you bring up BlizzCon, definitely I would say I wouldn't call BlizzCon a niche con. And so therefore, in today's world, I would also not call RTX a NicheCon. I think it started out with NicheCon roots, but I definitely don't think that it can I don't think it can fit in that category
That's
anymore.
Interesting. No, yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit, but Alex, I want to hear your thoughts too.
For niche cons, I can't say that I've gone to anything that resembles it too much. The thing that I can only think of right now is Cosplay and Photography Expo.
Yeah, sure.
Because
Absolutely.
it's pretty much mostly focused on cosplay and photography. It's not like, oh, there's like a huge exhibit hall, there's a lot of gaming or anything like that. There's not like a lot of celebrity guests, that sort of thing. It's solely based on cosplay, how to make it, how to find different ways of doing it, and the photography aspect as well.
Sure.
So there's panels for that. There's venues, but it's mostly cosplay venues, I'd say. Not a lot of like, it's a smaller con, so there's not a lot of stuff in general, but they don't have like artist alley or dealer's room or like a gaming room or stuff like that, basically. So that's the only thing that I can think of that comes close to.
That's actually a good example, I would say.
Yeah, it's the only thing I can come up with on the spot. I mean,
that's complete. I'm actually glad you brought those two because there were things I want to talk about next. And finally, Gilman, do you have anything to say? No. Okay.
Still looking cute. All right.
Yeah, no, that's his one job. No, okay. So
cute and cuddly.
Yep. I wish that was my job. So you both of you brought. Sorry, Will brought up RTX, which is large in terms of volume, space taken, and people that attend. Same thing with BlizzCon. But Alex, you brought up Cape, which for all intents and purposes is a small con in terms of the things I just said. There's not many people go to it. It's not in a huge venue, and they don't have the things that, say, RTX does, like a gaming room or so on and so forth. But I would actually personally consider both of those niche cons. So I don't want to get to philosophy and the Webster Dictionary of the word niche, but for me, personally, a niche con is something that is super focused in its content. So for RTX, it is anything and everything related to Rooster Teeth. For Cape, it's anything and everything related to cosplay and photography. And each of those conventions has either guests or panels or events that are related to those very specific things, as opposed to, say, the bigger cons where they have kind of a mixed bag of everything. I mean that in a good way.
It's like a party pleaser.
Yeah. Very much jack of all trades, but master of none are the bigger cons. So the Katsukons and Anime Bostons have the cosplay things. They have those things that talk about either anime or video games, but doesn't really deep dive as much as, say, the niche cons do. And I really wanted to specifically talk about the Final Fantasy XIV Fan Fest. It's a lot of stuff. And for the sake of continuing, because I want to not drink all my water, I'm just going to call it Fan Fest. It is a convention specifically for Final Fantasy, even more specifically, Final Fantasy XIV. So that is the MMO of the Final Fantasies. Of the 15 that are currently here, 2 of them are MMOs, and the one that we went to is specifically for 14.
That's pretty specific.
Yes. So
it's very specific.
Yes, and like it's crazy because it's similar to that of Cape, where it focuses on the one thing, but the Fan Fest I'm going to and what's going to happen in Tokyo, is going to have upwards to 20,000 people.
Wow. For
the one game. That's the equivalent of 20,000 people in just going to Overwatch.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of 20,000 Ruby cosplayers.
Wow.
Just for Ruby. Just put things in perspective in both the niche specificity as well as the volume of number of people. So, yes, it has a large number of people, but I still call it niche because it is the one game. And that's crazy, like if you think of it that way. Now, the reason I brought Guillaume here is because he is a race of beast people called the Namazu. And to describe him for those listening on, just with your ears, he's basically a cute catfish in a Japanese garb for festivals. And he is adorable AF. He is my child.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, I guess to really... I don't want to take most of the time describing what FanFest is, but for all intents and purposes, it is a giant convention held in Vegas once every 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So not only is it niche in terms of the subject matter, but very scarce in terms of how frequent this is held. And this is because of its infrequency, it is able to do certain things, which I will then talk about. But is there anything you guys want to talk about? Like any questions about this certain fan fest?
Well, I think something that's interesting I find is that, when I first think of niche cons, I was kind of putting niche cons with niche fandoms. But I don't think that's the case. I think that you just said, like, that's a niche con, but it's of something that's very popular, but it's just that one thing of something that's very popular.
Oh yeah, everyone knows what Final Fantasy is.
Yeah.
But not everyone plays Final Fantasy 14.
Exactly. And not everybody knows about the fact that there is a convention solely for that one game in a series.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's why I didn't go to Anime NYC, is because I went to this thing instead, because I am super passionate about this.
Which is funny that you mentioned that, because they actually share about the same amount of attendees.
Yep.
So that's pretty crazy. You've got an anime con holding in the Javits in New York City, and you've got...
It's held in the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas.
Same size. One game, all of anime.
All of
Same
anime.
size.
All of anime.
All of it. Every single thing.
Yeah.
Not leaving out any of it.
Yeah.
Not one.
All right, cool. So, again, I don't want to talk too much about FanFest, but I do want to highlight things that were there that made me fall in love with it.
Yeah, no, go for it. Because I actually haven't heard much of your experience, so I'm actually really interested to hear your experiences from.
I was very hush-hush about it because I wanted to save it for this.
You've been saving it for the content.
Yeah, basically. So, like with any other convention, either niche or big, it has panels, it has guests, it has events, it has games. But what's cool about FanFest is that these are tailored specifically for Final Fantasy XIV.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess to allow me to elaborate. So you talked about your experience going to the airport and meeting fellow people in RTX garb and immediately knowing, hey, you're going to RTX.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they know as much about a specific part of a RTX than you. Let me put it this way. I only watch Ruby, really, nowadays, for the RTX content. So if I go to RTX, I would only able to hold a conversation with other Ruby fans.
True.
But there are people who watch Ruby, who watch Genlock, who watch RVB, who just like listening to Barbara make puns. There are people that do that. But I wouldn't be able to hold a meaningful conversation with them. FanFest, if I see someone wearing swag or cosplay or something, not only do I immediately know they'll play the same game, I immediately know they're crazy about it as much as I am, because it's only held once every 2 years. It's a con that, for many people, they had to enter a raffle to even get badges.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how popular and how, like, hotcakes these badges went. It's a miracle I got 4. But that is, I'm not to take away that cool experience of being hyped for just seeing someone across a room, your eyes meet, and you instantly fall in love with them because you share that same exact passion about this one thing. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's a really good feeling.
Yeah, it honestly is. And again, call back to the whole, fandom elitism, where, like, we're already a small community. Why do we need to cannibalize ourselves? Just love it for what it is.
Yeah,
we're all geeks here, right? Yeah.
Something.
Yes.
Sorry. Were you saying?
I was gonna say it's Geek Kind, so yeah, we're all geeks.
Yeah.
Something that I was gonna kind of reminds me of how, sometimes I'll cosplay for something that's a bit more of a niche fandom. I think a good example is Makoto from K Project, which is it's known, but not a lot of people actually watch / or obsess with it.
Yeah.
And when I cosplay that and go to an anime con, I'm looking for 1 or 2 fan interactions. I'm not expecting to be stopped every 5 minutes. I know that this is going to be unpopular, but having 1 or 2 of those interactions is amazing because I know how scarce it is. And so if I find someone who likes that one anime that's not in the top 50 animes that people watch, it makes it way more valuable,
Absolutely.
those experiences. And it makes you feel I don't know, one of those experiences is just as powerful as 10 of something that I'm doing for something that's popular.
Yeah.
I'd say something that's similar for me is that I don't like cosplaying characters that are the one that everybody wants to cosplay, if you will. like Diva from Overwatch, everyone cosplays her, or Harley Quinn from Overwatch. Like, I'm not saying I'd cosplay them, but like
it's a new DLC character. Don't
sorry,
worry.
sorry, not Overwatch, DC.
It's like Harley Quinn from Overwatch. What?
Hey, maybe who knows? We'll see.
He spoiled the next DLC character, guys. A collaboration.
My
with the
bad,
two.
my bad. But yeah, I like to do characters that aren't as well known or just aren't cosplayed as much. So yeah, I guess like it's not. I don't want to be the most popular character. I want to be one that's a little not as much done, which makes it feel a little more special, I guess.
But the fact that you do that though makes the fan interaction of people who share the same passion that much worth it.
Oh, definitely.
I feel like that's why most of us cosplay, because when you do meet that person to appreciate your cosplay, you know that like you understand the fandom on a deeper level, and that's what FanFest was for 3 whole days. Sorry, 2 whole days. Bonus day for me because I needed to relax. But 2 whole days of just constant, just deep dive talks down this giant rabbit hole of like this one game. And to transition that, I was Andrew and I, because we both attended, were in cosplay, and the cosplay community for the Final Fantasy 14 is probably, sorry Ruby guys fans, but like it trumps that fandom in terms of the cosplay community, because not only is it super friendly, but the quality of the costumes there were breathtaking. Like during the Twitch stream of that cosplay fashion show, I think they had over 20,000 viewers just watching that cosplay fashion show.
Like the same amount of people were actually there at FanFest.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
crazy.
Some stupid large amount, and I was humbled by the craftsmanship there. But you know what? Even amongst the presence of these godlike cosplayers, they still like noticed me. Senpai noticed me and acknowledged me and welcomed me in open arms, saying, "Hey, we love your cosplay," and stuff like that. I just that interaction between the cosplayers themselves was awesome. But to more transition to the panels themselves, the panels are also very specifically tailored to the Final Fantasy 14 as well. And not only were they specifically tailored, but they were led by the people who made the game.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
And to cite an example, Koji Fox, he's the primary translator and lore guy for the FanFest, Final Fantasy 14. And in that very night, during the lore panel, they said, "Hey, what do you want to name this fish?" Cool. Changed it in-game that night. So what a fan voted for, hey, can you call this fish the giant, goobly, monster-eating plant of doom? Yeah, sure. Changed it that night, so that is now canon in the game.
That's so awesome.
I like when the creator is also like a fan of their own work to the point that they want to delve into the lore. Like they're creating the lore, but at the same time, they might have to keep up with like other stuff that people might add to it that might become official, might not.
And think of it this way, like you guys are huge fans of I guess the 100 Things Genlock. What if you can just send a text to the director of Genlock, say, "Hey, can you make this character?" and he just does that.
Yeah.
That'd be cool, right?
Yeah,
That'd be hella cool.
That's literally what FanFest was, where that, the game, 7 layers of Kevin Bacon. There was only 1 layer of Kevin Bacon there. It was just me and the creator of my favorite game, essentially, talking face to face. I shook his hand, took a selfie with him. But like when the director of the game holds these conventions, now this isn't like some fan thing. This is sponsored and created by Square Enix, the guys who make Final Fantasy.
Right.
So it's technically industry, but they very much tailor it for the fans. And even when you get there are set pieces that are to make it feel like this is a Final Fantasy 14 convention. There was a replica giant crystal. There was a replica, essentially Japanese tea house there for you to sit down and chill. There was giant, essentially carnival games that replicate the carnival in game, called the Gold Saucer. It's a giant casino, essentially. But all of this had the giant, like, just the magnitude of a big con, but for that one game. And that's what blew me away. This is the only niche con I've ever gone and plan on continuing going and for the end of time until the game is popular, which goes into my disadvantage, but that's the leading question for later. But I really want to hammer in that whole, there are less layers of Kevin Bacon between you and the creator. I really do want to stress that, because not only did I meet the director of the game and the lore guy, but I also met like various art directors. A lot of the fans were there too, people who are essentially like, who's big in RTX? The Barbaras of Final Fantasy 14. I met the fans who became that, like, the main person who makes these guides on how to play the game was there. The main person who makes all these comedy videos for the game was there.
So basically everyone important surrounding the game was there.
Yes, both the main people who make the game and the fans who are there.
Yeah, that is a very like RTX type quality of like you go there for the community, but also knowing that, you know, for the people that you don't usually see, like who you only see on screen or behind the scenes, like you actually have the chance to either see them or maybe even talk with them. And that's a really extra layer of like awesomeness of knowing that it's not just the content, it's also the creators are there and with you experiencing this event. And I think there's something about that that's really cool and special.
Yep.
Yeah, and like you said, there's not really a separation between you and the creators of the game, which is really cool because a lot of the time when you go to a con, you are going to be connecting mostly with the other people who love the game who aren't actually officially a part of it. They're just cosplaying or they're just fans of it.
Yeah.
But here, you're literally you're in communication with the people who have created it, including the director, which is absolutely fantastic.
Shouts to Yoshi P. He's the director of the 14 game, and it's crazy because when he went on stage for the keynote, people were chanting his name like he was God. Like they were screaming Yoshi P, and like he shows off like he was in cosplay, by the way. He shows off cosplay. People went wild. This guy is so cool, and you know, all my love for this one man. But another cool fan interaction I really want to talk about is the difference between meeting up with people at FanFest and meeting up with people at, say, Anime Boston or Katsucon. So as all cosplayers have Instagrams, it is super easy to share a photo of your cosplay, share them with other cosplayers, other people Instagrams, and just basically show your identity and who you are to other cosplayers.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say, hey, I'll be at Katsucon, you can immediately recognize us. Hey, I recognize you in this cosplay because I saw pictures of it, right? Well, FanFest's not quite the same. This is an MMO, meaning you take the identity of your avatar that you created. My avatar is named Material. When people ask, or when we talk on Discord, they don't call me Kyle, unless I tell them to. They call me Material, my avatar name.
Yeah.
So that is another layer of boundary for them knowing me. They don't know me as Kyle. They know me as Material, the Femoral Paladin. And unless they are friending me on Facebook or I tell them my name, that's who they know me as. There are people that make groups to take down these giant bosses to talk on Discord, and they don't know what they look like. And they meet for the very first time at FanFest.
That's really cool.
It's very cool, and that's just the thing, that the game created this barrier that's so easily overcome in other conventions as cosplayers. Like, sure, my handle is Koopa Cow Cosplay, but you know what I look like. You know what I wear because I post it online.
It's true. You have even if your like cosplays like change how you look, you still have an idea of what this person like online. You have no clue.
Yeah, and also it might be a little bit more difficult for people from this con to actually recognize you if you were on Instagram and cosplaying that character, because if you're using hashtags, you might be using the hashtag for your own name that you created.
Correct. But in FanFest, you only know what you look like in character. And I look nothing. First of all, I play a female character, so that's one. Two, she's a giant Amazonian, like big, beefy, pink hair, gorgeous. I look nothing like that.
I think you can pull it off.
I mean, I try. I definitely try every day, but I just don't as much as I try. But like meeting, I mean, obviously me, I am super open book. All people there know me by my Facebook, know me by Instagram. But there are people who have never met before, and like seeing this reunion, not even a reunion, but like just this meeting of people who have never met before for the very first time in person. Like all I heard was your voice and you swearing at the mic, but now I get to put that voice to a face, and that's just, I think it's really adorable to me.
It always like throws me off, I'd say, when I. Well, like if you're listening to a podcast or something, but you don't look into like what the people who are talking about, like what they look like actually. Like or if you're listening to a voice actor in a movie or a video game, and you're just like, I recognize the voice, but you don't really have you might have an idea of what they look like, but you might just be like, oh, it's just a voice basically, and then you see a face, and you're like, That's just kind of jarring. I'm like, oh,
there's someone out there right now who this is their first video podcast that they're watching, and they've only been listening to our voices, and they just now found out what we look like.
I'm sorry to disappoint.
Yeah.
They only came to find out, like they only clicked on the video so they could find out what your plush looks like, and they're like, oh, also that's what the people look like. Oh.
Yeah, sorry, 3 ugly mooks and my
unsubscribe.
Yeah.
Kyle is not an Amazonian woman with
I'm not.
hair.
I try.
I know the voice was very convincing. Yeah, it would have fooled me online.
Yeah. But I just really wanted to stress that point.
No, that's super cool and can be applied to so many things. But like with that, again, with the niche thing, it really amplifies that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And that focality is something that isn't without drawbacks. Before I get to this, anything else I want to talk about? The focality of it. I mean, it sounds great, and obviously I'm a huge fanboy and obviously very biased, but I'm not without realizing there are drawbacks. And before I get into ones I listed, perhaps you guys can think of some at the top of your dome. So what would you think would be a drawback for a niche con?
Well, sometimes like attendance can be hard to get, depending on how it is and how it's established. It can be
it is too.
Yeah, if you're looking to start up a niche con, sometimes it may be harder to get it off the ground. So if you're someone who's looking to organizing such a thing, that could be a much bigger challenge than just starting up an anime convention or a Comic-Con, which everybody knows what those things are.
But one of the things that would definitely be helpful for that, if you're trying to get the word out, is just, having a booth at cons saying, hey, this con's going to happen. That's what AAC does. And while AAC is known pretty well, I'd say that it's if you're starting up a con, it's difficult if you just have a link or something online, because nobody will hear about it unless you speak about it on a podcast or something.
Right.
But actually getting out content for it, out there, or just being out there in general, seeing other cosplayers who might like it, and I think that would make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Than just
I also feel like if you want to do it, any successful niche con, I feel like has to equivalently put more effort than your normal convention, like anime and Comic-Con convention, because there's more attention to the fact that it can't just be copy-paste of what other cons are doing. You have to come up with your own
identity.
Yeah. And sometimes when it comes to certain events, you have to make it tailored to whatever this thing is, and that can be just a lot more, attention to detail and a lot more making stuff that doesn't exist, where there's just not as much stuff to copy and paste, You're basically, depending on the niche you're going to, it could be new territory. There could not be equivalent of what you're making, and you have to discover yourself what that looks like.
It does really limit what you're able to bring to the con. Because with niche cons, it's very specific, but with specific, it's also limited to a lot of things. So you have to figure out what the identity is of the con, basically, or what you want to have it be, basically. And then you have to find stuff to bring to the table, or create new stuff to bring to the table that will help the con.
I mean, even at RTX, where they have multiple shows to work with, I still have to I really no one says that you can't bring not Rooster Teeth related cosplays to there, but you feel like it's frowned upon. It's like they're putting in the effort to make a convention just for RTX, just for Rooster Teeth stuff, and then you want to go there and cosplay something that's not Rooster Teeth. It just seems kind of silly. So then, for me, I had to get an extra cosplay in there because I wanted to, extra Rooster Teeth cosplay specifically, because I wanted to have a whole weekend filled with Rooster Teeth cosplays. So that can also be a downfall.
I will say that with Rooster Teeth, even if it's not specifically for, it can be a mashup of Rooster Teeth and something else. I feel like that works pretty well too. And also, Rooster Teeth did start out with Red versus Blue, which is
yes, true.
Halo.
So you could get away with just about anything Halo.
Yeah, if you do Halo and then maybe sprinkle a little bit of Rooster Teeth related stuff like Ruby or whatever.
But like I said, even then, that's a much more wider spectrum than say FanFest here, whereas they have lots of shows, they have lots of different references, and they have lots of stuff to pull from. And now they actually have multiple channels under Rooster Teeth itself, so we also have those to pin off. So ultimately, not as bad as a lot of the other niche cons out there as far as what to prepare for.
And honestly, I'm really impressed that they were able to have such a large con for, again, we've talked about this before, but for one game, that limits them a lot.
They've only had at least the NA FanFest for three times.
Okay.
3 times. The 1 and 2 is the 3rd time they did it.
Wow.
Yep.
So it's been going on for 6 years then?
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And you were right. There were some people like the first time I went to FanFest, there was someone cosplaying from a different Final Fantasy, and while it wasn't, I wouldn't say looked down upon, it was definitely jarring. Because like, yo, this is for Final Fantasy 14. You're cosplaying Final Fantasy 10. That being said, later that month they announced that her outfit is now a costume in 14. So I guess that point is not moot. But the animosity was there.
Well, it's I don't think it's as extreme as this, but it maybe be like cosplaying a Marvel character at a DC meeting.
Yeah, that's way more jarring.
Yeah.
Or wearing like say a Star Trek uniform at like a
Star Wars convention.
Oh, I was gonna say a medieval times type thing, but yeah.
Well, it kind of worked. They've done time travel before.
All right, we're sidetracking there. That's funny though. But yeah, no, what you guys pointed upon is definitely a drawback. Where especially for people or creators of the FanFest, you're gonna have to come up with your own identity. You can't steal the gazebo from Gaylord.
No.
As cool as that would be, hint, hint. You can't just do that. But I feel like FanFest, there's the amount of subscribers and player base and just love for this game, it was easier for them to do. As opposed to, say, a niche convention would be like a Star Trek convention or a Star Wars convention. Yeah.
At FanFest, do they have like an Artist Alley / dealer's room type deal?
That's the thing. They don't. They just have a giant merch line where you can pre-order official Final Fantasy 14 merch and get that there first. So, and they have a booth where they showcase, again, fan-submitted artwork that they made that we vote on and then they get prizes for. But you can't buy, like, what you consider Artist Alley or
Which is interesting because that's a pretty... That's actually a real challenge because that's a pretty standard... thing for con goers to have is those outlets. I mean, the ones that have the least is like gaming cons, but even those have tons of companies. For instance, PAX East has tons of companies backing it and providing you with tons of goodies and stuff and gamer-related companies. So it's not quite your dealer's room aesthetic, but it is a lot closer than just having official stuff, official only. Even RTX had their own dealer's room to deal with, and people just doing it was like a pretty standard Comic-Con / PAX style dealer's room for that, but
it's mostly for Rooster Teeth related merch, right?
Yeah, mostly. So yeah, they do have to keep it. It was either Rooster Teeth related or it was gaming related. I think Rooster Teeth branched off into allowing a lot of RTX allowed a lot of like gaming related companies take a part, and because, they are founded a lot of gaming stuff. They've got Achievement Hunter, which is just their gaming channel. I mean, they were built off of Halo, so, like, also gaming. So gaming's very integrated with Rooster Teeth, and I think they've given a pass in order to expand faster to anything video game related being relevant at RTX. But this one's like standing firm. Was like, no, we're not gonna copy paste other formulas of cons. We're gonna do our own.
All we
thing.
got is 14 merchandise, and that's all you're gonna get. And honestly, between Andy and I, we spent a lot of money on merchandise, so they got their money. So
clearly it was money well spent.
Oh yeah, obviously, yeah. Gilma is very.
You got
happy.
your son.
Yeah,
so.
I got my son. Yeah. But other things that you guys didn't listen to, I personally talked to Andy about, and we thought of this. It kind of blew our minds too, is that when you go to these, you better be passionate AF about it. Like, you can't really go as a casual fan. Not saying you can't,
right?
But just know that you will be surrounded by people who are as insane as Andrea and I am about this game. Where we're gonna say, I would say some obscure facts like, who's your favorite primal? Is it Ifrit, Shiva, or Garuda? You have no idea what I just said.
No.
Neither would they. And they would feel alienated, as opposed to everyone else would be like, Shiva's best girl. And stuff like that. But like when you go to these very niche conventions, know that you are surrounded by like some like pretty fanatical fans here.
That's actually a really good point. Do you feel like there's almost a small... I have to imagine there's some sort of elitism present.
That's my next point. There is, because of that more niche factoring, elitism, especially in the FanFest, is... I'm not gonna say at a high, but it's very different. Because when this M1 MMO, there are people who call themselves interior decorator mains, where all they do is they buy a house and decorate it. You can do that in the game.
It's like a job.
Yeah, there are people who literally all they do is get as pretty armor as possible and dress up their avatar, which is called glamour in this game, and I would argue that is the true end game of 14. However, there are those, when they say end game, they mean the giant bosses that take a lot of teamwork, coordination, and hours of work and practice to down. And those are the very much 1% of the community that plays, or these raiders as I call them, where they make these groups to down these bosses. And that group is super, super serious. It is for them very much their job. And compared to that versus the interior decorator main or the fisher, where all he does is fish, there can be some clashing there. The people would say like, oh, you're not a true FanFest fan because you don't raid, or you're not a true fan because you don't fish, you know?
Now, are you a raider?
I used to be, and I do miss it, but I've become a lot more a filthy casual, as they call us nowadays. I just don't have the time to play anymore. But that fractioning, despite that niche thing, which I find interesting, even at a niche con, there is that fractioning of factions amongst that one community. It's crazy.
That's a really good point, because it is both. It's like the curse of having that close and specificness of what everyone's there for, is that you're really weeding out the type of people that you have there until you have one type of group. So normally when you go to like an anime convention, you have your own type of like circles within that. You've got the people who are like into like shonen animes. You got the people who are maybe more casual fans, and they're totally fine with anime inspired art as well. They're not purists. And you've got people who are in it for like things like I forget the category, but like Love Live, just that, like those types of animes.
Oh, like idols.
Idols, yes. There's people who are just into like that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So, but because it's more vague, those groups are allowed to breathe, and they're not really butting heads. They're just off doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But when you got everybody that's like, this is all for everybody, and everybody's included in this, all of a sudden those like circles of like different types of groups within this are a lot closer, and like I think butting heads is only going to be natural, unfortunately.
You're making an already small circle even smaller.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that is something I personally, fortunately, was not a part of, because when I was there, everyone was very much a, hey, you love this game, we love you. So, but I have seen it, especially online, because the internet's a terrible place.
That's why we go there so much.
Yeah. But that's another drawback to that. And the last one we kind of touched upon, and then another one's a personal one, but I'll talk about that towards the end. But the next big disadvantage is something that it is inherently part of being niche. So let me lead this point on by asking you guys a question. What would think would happen if I held a boy band convention, specifically 90s boy bands convention?
Like, what would I think would be there?
Yeah.
Like, I immediately think NSYNC and Backstreet Boys.
Exactly.
I would definitely cosplay Backstreet Boys.
Yeah. But imagine if I said, all right, let's do that when it was the 90s. How much more popular do you think that would be?
You mean like have the con back in the 90s?
Yeah. I had a Backstreet Boys NSYNC convention at the peak of their popularity, held in Boston.
I'd say like it'd be a little more difficult for you to get the word out, honestly, and also I'd say it would be possibly more judged, I guess, just because cons weren't as much of a thing back then.
Okay, maybe con was the right word, but basically
like a meetup, or
my point of that was time. Time is ever flowing forward. Time is something we cannot stop unless you're the doctor. This FanFest, as much as I'd hate to admit it, and this game isn't going to last forever.
Right. Especially being an MMO, by nature, it isn't going to exist forever.
As much as I'd like it to, it won't. So 10, 20, 15 years from now, I won't be going to this convention because it won't exist anymore, because people will stop playing it.
Yeah, and it's because it's an MMO, it's mostly, it only works if people actually play the game together online, basically,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
So RTX will be forever, I feel like. The anime bossons and Katsukons will be forever. It's just like, as long as there's anime, there will be these cons.
Right.
When Final Fantasy 14 kicks the bucket and we move on to the next MMO, FanFest will no longer be a thing.
Yeah. That is very interesting because, especially with it being a video game, because it's already parted way from the series.
Yeah.
So you've already cut that facet off, and you're just working on an MMO. Which, granted, MMOs do evolve more than your typical game, but it's still a game that is effectively finished, even if it's got extra content still coming its way. So that is very much a much harder deadline than, say, if you were to make a niche convention over a single show, because even when that show ends, you're just like, well, there's like stuff that can come up. They could have prequels, they could have like spin-offs and all these things. But even then, that would slowly, eventually die as like the fan. But this, I feel like this is a much harder stop in a way, especially because by nature of video games, it's meant to be moved on from. I think shows have a much better replay value, if you will, in the long run. People are still watching Seinfeld today.
Yeah.
If you made a convention for Seinfeld, that would go on for who knows how long.
Yeah, they definitely have more staying power than
right.
what I'm into, and I unfortunately am on a deadline, a timeline, I should say.
Right. Mm-hmm. And if you like had a convention for a single game that was like 20 years ago, I mean, I don't know how popular that would be, even in your most popular games.
Yeah.
You know that. Like just focusing on one game, not a franchise. So there's like, oh, what like Call of Duty was like 20 years ago. That, like, well, that's still an ongoing series, and we're talking about a single game. Like, think of like making a convention just for like Call of Duty 2 Modern Warfare. Like, people would be like,
that's weird,
okay, cool, but like that's just that one game. You know, I'd be more interested in just the whole like that's got a like irrelevancy that's only like good for so long. It's a very like ticking time bomb type aesthetic, and when you like, especially with video games that are nature, they don't last as long as like TV shows and movies.
Right.
You know, so that's a very, very unique attribute of that con specifically.
And when I thought of that, it really made me sad.
I was about to say, it's like, oh, that's gotta be a really hard realization.
And did you any other thoughts on that, Alex?
No, I think he basically summed it up.
Yeah. Which leads to my next point. Is, for Andy and I, the post-con depression for that was the most depressed post-con I've ever had. I still am going through it. The most recent Katsucon was more or less me treating it as the rebound con for FanFest, because all I wore was Final Fantasy 14 cosplays. I met with the Final Fantasy 14 friends there. I met at FanFest to try to relive that experience, but it's not the same. But hey, I still had fun regardless. Shout outs to the most recent Coscast. Okay, so let's talk about the next leading question here is, you guys kind of alluded to it, but like, if you could make your own niche con, pick any one thing, now that you've heard of what my niche con is, what would it be and what would it entail? Like, to reiterate, FanFest, I had the director of the game there, I had cosplayers there, I had the art director there, I had the fan creators there, and I had these set pieces. But if you could pick your own fandom or franchise and make a niche con of it, what would it be and what would it entail?
This gets me really excited, to be honest, because now I'm just like dreaming up, and now I'm just trying to think, like, if I had to pick one, what would it be?
Just one.
Yeah, and to make it easier, let's say your budget's unlimited.
Unlimited.
Go for it. Go for it.
I know for one thing, like one of my OG favorite fandoms is Doctor Who, but they've got already some pretty prolific Doctor Who based conventions. I think there's a big one in New Jersey, I believe, is where
there's got to be a WhoCon.
It's enormous. And I think that, I'm trying to think, like, video games is really cool because video games, you have a lot more interaction. So, like, you see the benefit of having a video game specific type convention and the layers that you could add to making that more fun. For instance, you were saying about how you had this thing where it's like you could ask the creator to change something, and they changed it.
Yeah.
If it was a TV series, you can't do that. That's forever cemented. Like, everything that's happened is forever cemented. You can't like, oh, I want to change these characters' names. Like, well, you can't because it's already happened.
Well, continuity is sometimes changed with TV shows and movies a lot of the time.
I really should preface, maybe more hyperbolized, but like, all he did was change the name of a fish.
I mean, still,
I didn't change the main character.
But you couldn't even do that unless if it didn't have a name. You still couldn't do that.
Sure.
Is it any immediate thoughts for you?
I'm trying to like rack my brains for one thing that I'd want to have as a niche con, and maybe like Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm not sure.
I would attend the ever living hell of that con.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I'd be eating like a bunch of cabbages and stuff.
Oh my god. I would cosplay as a cabbage.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
That's actually
I'd
a
have
really
a
good
cabbage
pick.
dodgeball fight. That's what I'd do.
And that's also nice because they've also got. I was gonna say they've got 2 series in a movie, but I was like, no, they don't have a movie.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. You've been invited to Lake Laogai. Congratulations.
Oh, I don't think he gets it because he hasn't
No,
watched the
I
entire
haven't
show.
finished it.
Oh, that's awkward.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I was like, oh,
yeah.
okay.
Can I be invited though?
Yeah, no. So when you say Avatar: Last Airbender, you mean like that specific series, like with the gang, or including Korra,
I'd say include Korra.
or so just Avatar in general?
The Avatar world.
Non-blue
basically.
people.
Not blue people. They're in a different world.
That's a different. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I haven't said this, but I haven't actually watched all of Korra. I started watching it, and it's a very different aesthetic from the original Last Airbender show.
Absolutely.
So,
But like, introduce a whole cast of characters you can cosplay, a whole bunch of voice actors you can go that can attend your convention.
It would be a great way, because some people who love coming up with their own original characters, if you were to come up with an original character in the world of Avatar and brought it to, like, say, Anime NYC or Boston Comic Con, it wouldn't get that much attention. But if you brought it to an Avatar specific con, I think people would actually pick up on it.
Especially if it's like a famous
That's
artwork.
cool.
Yeah.
I would say that it kind of falls under the category of sort of like Harry Potter and the Hogwarts houses, basically. It's like, okay, am I fire, air, earth, or water, basically? Like,
sure.
which one am I? You could kind of make your own character, sort of, and then...
Why settle? I'd take all of them. I'd be the Avatar.
Yeah,
Why settle?
you could do that. You could have it all.
But no, that's cool you picked that, because like, that is a huge fandom, I would say.
People would go to it.
But making an Avatar con, that'd be super niche.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think for me, I'm going to pick something that's a little less niche, only because I feel like there hasn't actually been a proper convention style version of this that I know of, at least. I could totally be wrong, but I feel like visioning wise, if I had an unlimited budget, you would have so many like possibilities here, and that's Harry Potter. If you just had like the original, just like forget Fantastic Beasts, forget the other stuff, just the original 1 through 7 books and movies content, and made a con where everything was specifically related to that. Because I think what's so cool about Harry Potter is that it is a movie that encourages more interactions with fans, because hey, get sorted into your own house, like it's almost encouraged to come up with your own character and like who would you be inside this universe. And I feel like that kind of environment would inspire a really cool convention. There has been festivals and stuff like that.
There's no way there's a Harry Potter convention, or there's
I'm
not.
pretty sure it's somewhere.
There's festivals, but like there isn't like a and because here's the thing is that there's festivals, like there's a big one in Pennsylvania, I believe there's a big one in like Maryland, but there's no official Harry Potter one, and the problem is that these festivals are being slammed because they don't have the proper copyrights for the stuff. So at first they were allowed to do everything Harry Potter specific, but now they're having to make it more generic, which is really disappointing because you don't want to be a generic wizard. Right. You want to be a wizard in Harry Potter.
A Gryffindor. Or
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I didn't know it was a copyright issue. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so what you do have officially from I think it's Warner Brothers.
So are you talking about having a Harry Potter con that is specifically endorsed by?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So not a fan con.
Not a fan
as
thing.
in J.K. Rowling is there.
Exactly. If you had all the benefits of what you have with your creators as a Harry Potter con, and they went all out. It was like a huge convention, and then this would be a great one to have dealers room and artist alleys in, because there's so much creativeness within the artist in there. So I think that should actually be allowed and not like official merch only. I mean, we already see like Harry Potter merch, like fan art and stuff is prolific.
So much.
And then also, panels would be stupid easy because there's so much lore, and people would want to like, you can make very specific panels about like attributes. Like, what if you could go to a panel of what it was like to like teach in the dark arts? Just like you could do like so many specific things. You could learn about like specific facets of things that fascinated you about like Hogwarts and how it operates. The amount of celebrities you could have there is endless. And you could have some really fun activities, because there's lots of game-related and just activity-related stuff that you could easily incorporate into events at like an actual Harry Potter con.
Yeah, like the set pieces at FanFest were great too. There was legit a giant chocobo racing game you can play that was in game. How cool would it be if you would line up to get your sword into a hat by the actual sorting hat?
Yeah.
You had the technology to do that.
It'd be so epic.
Yeah.
So if there was like an actual, and I want to preference, an actual official Harry Potter
And
con.
that's what blows my mind that there isn't one yet.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
They would make butts loads of money.
so much money. Wow. That's wild.
Yeah. So, because I think what they're settling on is that they have their stuff in Universal.
Yeah.
You know, which is similar, and it's like a cool experience to go to, but it's like,
was so
you don't have
touristy.
J.K. Rowling showing up.
was
You
so
don't have,
touristy, yeah.
like, you know, you can't go there and meet, like, the people who made Harry Potter or people who played it. Like, you can't do that kind of stuff. You've got a very specific set of things you can do, and that never changes, and that's just there, you know?
Yeah.
And then, like, I feel like people who go there, like some people will go there because they love Harry Potter, and some people go there for the novelty of it. You know, it's like, oh, I know of Harry Potter, I should check this out. So you don't go into like Hogwarts at Universal and expect every single person there is going to be like a hardcore fan.
Yeah.
So you don't have that like bonding experience either, you know? So
I'm all for a like officially endorsed J.K. Rowling endorsed HP Con. That'd be
yeah.
All the butterbeer.
Oh,
Oh my god, so good.
Yeah, again, like it's too easy because that world is so fleshed out that theme-wise, it'd just be so easy to set everything up. You know,
is Warner
all
Brothers
right
still
there.
on it?
Yeah, Warner
okay. Hey, Warner Brothers, we just gave you a free idea.
We won't trademark it.
Yeah.
You can
No,
have it.
just
Take all the money. I want to
Just-
go to this con.
Yeah, just a couple free tickets.
We will give you money so we can go to the con.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Nickelodeon, Avatar Con. Please.
I mean that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
Make it so.
Make it happen. Yeah.
make it so.
Yeah. I would 100%
Different
go to that.
fandom,
yeah.
but still.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know all our friends would go to that. It's crazy.
And then also
yeah.
it'd be interesting to see is like, you know, I mean, sure, Harry Potter, extremely relevant right now, especially with Fantastic Beasts kind of prolonging that. But I mean, I feel like, especially if you had this at 10 years time from now, I feel like it's not going to be this ultra popular thing that we know that it is currently. So I feel like it would start to come more back into your typical niche category thing. Because right now it seems like, well, Harry Potter con, that sounds like making like a Star Wars con. Like that's just like,
Which
that's not
they
very niche
kind
at
of
all.
already have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but I would argue that I think Harry Potter is actually coming on its downswing, and especially because I'm talking about like the OG Harry Potter stuff, like excluding Fantastic Beasts. Not because I don't like Fantastic Beasts, but I'm very fascinated with the world that was built specifically within that first set of movies.
Sure.
Yeah, make it while it's hot.
Cool.
It's true.
Well, hey, Will wants an HP Con, and
I'm sure I'm not alone in this.
yeah,
I'm
and
sure I'm
Alex-
not alone.
Alex wants an Avatar Con. I'm all for that. All right. I mean, I guess
I'd
for
go
me,
to-
huh?
I mean, I'd go to both of those.
Oh, same. Yeah. For me, if I had to make my own niche con, I'm with you. I'm a huge, video game like freak. I would definitely like, as lame as it is, like I got it. This.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah. Like, shout outs to Final Fantasy 14 FanFest and its community, but you guys are like, you guys are great. And I'm a huge Final Fantasy fanboy, and going to that con was very much a dream come true for me. And,
Well, that's awesome.
I
They
hope-
gave you a son.
They gave me a son.
Yeah.
Yeah. And last leading question for you guys is, I want to go back to the big cons, the Anime Boston's Katsucons. Would you make them more focused? Knowing of what you want from your own niche con and the examples I've given, would you take what we have right now and make it more focused?
I don't think I would, because I feel like that's not my place to do, and also it would also negatively affect other people who like going to those cons.
Fair point. Fair point.
Like with the Boston Comic Con, it is a huge variety, and people are going so that they can find multiple things of what they like, basically, like your Harry Potter, Star Wars, Doctor Who, you name it, basically. And to take that away from people, it's kind of like nerfing a con in a way, in my opinion. It's like taking away from a certain aspect of what a con is.
Okay.
I, piggybacking off that, good points made. I would also like to add that sometimes having like an anime wide con or a Comic-Con wide con, I think is important for bringing new people into fandoms. Because there's some times where you would, for instance, I went to, ironically it wasn't an anime con, I went to Comic-Con and I was talking to a artist who, I was talking to him about how I liked Death Note. and I really liked the deep themes, like deep serious tones in that. And he suggests, like, you know what you would really like? I think you would really like Erased. Like, you should go watch Erased. And I've never heard of this before. And he was explaining it to me without spoiling anything. He's like, you know what? That does sound something like I would like. So I went home and I watched it. I was like, this is awesome. And and it was like, I was so grateful to like find this new like TV show that I love. And I only found that out because it wasn't like a specific thing. Heck, it wasn't even anime related. It was just a more vague thing. And it was someone like bringing me into like another fandom essentially. And I think if that's especially, and I mean at the time I was new to anime. If you're new into anime, you don't know what type of stuff you want to watch. So sometimes you just kind of see all of it in its glory and then kind of see what you gravitate towards. And I think that's really cool, as well as a cosplayer, it's also cool to not be too restricted in what you should feel comfortable wearing. And I mean, honestly, like, even though Katsucon is like an anime con, people just wear literally whatever. But when you go to like an anime con, you know, like, you can do lots of things. And it's also really cool sometimes to see just a little bit of everything with an anime. And I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I'd say that with limiting the, like, what a con has, it would also be limiting the cosplayers too, because cosplayers are very specific with a lot of stuff that they like, and they want to bring it to places that it'll get recognition, basically.
Yeah, and there's some stuff that will just never have its own niche con, you know? So you're never going to have, like, opportunities to, like, love this. Because sometimes, like I said, like, when I was cosplaying Makoto, there isn't a K con. I had to go to an anime to find K fans.
Well, there's a K-con, but that's K-pop. That's different.
Oh, very different.
Yeah.
But basically, the only way I could find those, believe it or not, is by going to some place that just had everybody.
Yeah.
You know? So sometimes to find the niche people, sometimes you need to go to a place that collects everybody.
Yeah.
So
like, until you get that HP con, you're gonna have to go see HP fans at the Anime Boston's or Comic Con.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually with you guys on this one. I would not make it more focused because these are the big cons I love because of their mixed bags. And as much as I love anime cons, I'm actually going to cite PAX East as an example. PAX East has an entire section called the Indie Mega Booth. This would not exist unless for PAX East. PAX East obviously is the gaming convention where all the major, Rooster's going to be there, Blizzard's going to be there, all the big companies will be there, but as well as the indie developers that will be there. And honestly, I spend most of my time at the Indie Mega Booth because I love indie games. So I'm with you guys there. Big cons don't need to be more focused.
Yeah, I think they complement each other really well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can, go to like a Comic-Con, you find out about like Final Fantasy 14, or you find out about like Rooster Teeth, and then you realize, hey, it's got its own convention. Then you just like go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's all good when I think that, they benefit from each other, and I think that they offer different experiences. I think that if you really, really love, for instance, if you love like Final Fantasy 14 like you do, and they have a con specifically for that, it is a dream experience and it's amazing. Hell, I had an amazing time at RTX, even if it wasn't just focused on the couple of shows that I'm obsessed with from them. Just being in there in that environment was something that was truly unique. I think that even though those can provide ultimately the most wholesome, most memorable experiences, it shouldn't devalue the more general experiences of just stuff that you enjoy, because those are still a lot of fun, just for different reasons.
Absolutely. Any closing remarks before I get into my conclusion statement here?
No, I don't have anything. Sorry.
Well, no, it's fine. We'll actually touched upon my conclusion statement, so the way I like to run panels, I have to have a conclusion. So this doesn't sound super scientific, and I apologize. But so in conclusion, I also shout outs to Andrea for helping me develop this, because it was so hard for me to put this into words. But
Andrea is who, by the way, for the people who don't know?
Yeah, Andrea is the other half of the parental figures of Guillaume here. She is my significant other, and I love her very much. But I love Guillaume here a lot more. Okay. I hope she doesn't listen to this podcast.
She's listening if she helped you out.
Yep. All right. So in conclusion, let's move on. In conclusion, niche conventions aren't necessarily better or worse than their larger counterparts. Rather, they allow their attendees to have a more focused yet different experience. So that's my opinions on it. So if that's all I got for this topic, guys.
That was really good, man. I enjoyed that a lot.
Kind of feels not as much with a niche sort of. It's not really niche so much, but like anime cons as opposed to regular big Comic Cons. Like there's anime fans at Comic Cons, but then more specific anime.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Now I'm just like, now you've got me really riled up for like a Harry Potter con. Now that I'm
same. Give me that.
Too easy. Even an Avatar con would be amazing too. I mean, yeah. I think that I will say there's something to leave everybody with. There should be more niche cons. There's not enough of them. And I understand that putting out an anime con and putting out a Comic Con is way easier to do financially, but I feel like it should be a more popular thing to have more niche cons.
Absolutely.
So encourage more of those, especially go to them. If they have them out there, go to them because they're, one, great experiences, and two, the people there work a lot hard to make them happen because they're not as easy pickings. So, yeah. All right. Well, thanks for talking with us on this. This was a great conversation, I find, and a lot of fun to talk about. So, we hope you enjoyed listening to us talk about it as well. And feel free to comment what type of niche con you would have, because we would love to hear that as well and get excited about those. And until next time, stay kind, geeks.
Inconceivable! Inconceivable!